And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. The description from Revelation 12 verse 1, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars, is a symbolic image that many interpret as having astronomical and spiritual significance. To visualize this scene with constellations and stars, it can be imagined as follows. Notable stars in this imagery. Spica in Virgo. This is Virgo's brightest star, located near her hand or ear of grain in many depictions. Regulus in Leo. Known as the heart of the lion, it is one of the brightest stars in the night sky and could symbolically represent the leader of the crown. Other stars. Stars like Algeba and Denebola in Leo might contribute to the image of a crown. Jupiter and Regulus, Leo constellation. Around 3 to 2 BCE, a series of close conjunctions occurred between Jupiter, the king planet, and Regulus, the king star in Leo. These conjunctions could be seen as part of a kingly celestial message, aligning with the idea of a divine ruler's birth. Virgo and the sun. The sun enters Virgo annually in late summer or early fall. Some theorists suggest that a notable alignment of the sun in Virgo, with the moon at her feet, could have occurred around the time of Jesus' birth. September 11th, 3 BCE, proposed date. Astronomer Dr. Ernest L. Martin suggested that on this date, the sun was in Virgo, clothed with the sun. The moon was near Virgo's feet. Jupiter and Regulus were in conjunction, forming a crown with the nearby stars of Leo. This alignment, combined with Jewish calendar traditions, has been proposed as a potential date for Jesus' birth. The celestial alignment described in Revelation 12 verse 1 has been linked to Jesus' birth and a significant event in 2017, both coinciding with Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Here's the connection. Jesus' birth. 3 BC astronomers like Dr. Ernest L. Martin proposed that on September 11th, 3 BC, during Sukkot, the sun was in Virgo, clothed with the sun. The moon was near Virgo's feet, and a crown of 12 stars formed with Leo and planets like Jupiter. This alignment aligns with Revelation 12 and suggests the timing of Jesus' birth point 2017 alignment. On September 23, 2017, another similar alignment occurred during Sukkot. The sun was in Virgo, the moon was near her feet, and planets joined Leo to form a crown of 12 stars. This sparked speculation about its prophetic significance. The imagery of the moon under the woman's feet in Revelation 12 verse 1 can be interpreted symbolically, connecting it to the prophecy in Genesis 3 verse 15 and the concept of Jesus' triumph over Satan. Here's how these elements connect. The moon as a symbol of Satan. In ancient cultures, the moon was often associated with false gods, such as Sin, the Mesopotamian moon god, or other lunar deities tied to deception and darkness. These associations connect the moon to Satan as the prince of darkness who seeks to usurp divine authority. Genesis 3 verse 15 prophecy. In the Garden of Eden, God declared to the serpent, a representation of Satan, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." This is understood as the first prophecy of the Messiah, who would crush Satan's power, symbolized by stepping on his head. Jesus' birth and the moon under her feet. Revelation 12 verse 1 depicts the woman with the moon under her feet. This could symbolize Jesus' dominion over Satan at his birth, fulfilling Genesis 3 verse 15. The woman's victory in standing on the moon represents the triumph of light over darkness, truth over deception, and Christ's ultimate authority over Satan's domain. Connection to Sukkot. Jesus' birth, during Sukkot, a time of celebration and divine dwelling among humanity, aligns with the idea of him coming as the light of the world to conquer spiritual darkness. The celestial alignment at his birth and similar events, such as in 2017, visually emphasize this victory. In this interpretation, the moon beneath the woman's feet signifies the subjugation of Satan and his dominion, affirming the fulfillment of God's promise in Genesis. Jesus, as the seed of the woman, crushes Satan, bringing redemption and victory to humanity. In 2017, the celestial alignment with the moon under Virgo's feet during Sukkot could symbolize the nearing fulfillment of Genesis 3 verse 15, where the Messiah crushes Satan's power. This event may signal the soon return of Christ as we approach the end times. Verses 2, "And she being with child cried, traveling in birth, and pain to be delivered. Revelation 12 verse 2 describes a woman with child, experiencing the pain and labor of childbirth. This verse is rich with symbolic meaning. The woman. She is often interpreted as Israel, the nation through whom the Messiah, Jesus, was born, or as a symbol of the church, bearing witness to God's work in the world. The child. The child represents Jesus, the Messiah, born to bring salvation and fulfill God's promises. This birth signifies a pivotal moment in redemptive history, travail and pain. The labor and pain reflect the struggles of Israel leading up to the Messiah's birth, centuries of oppression, waiting, and spiritual yearning. It also symbolizes the church's ongoing struggle to bring forth God's kingdom in a world plagued by sin and opposition. This verse highlights both the suffering and the hope associated with the coming of the Messiah, emphasizing the cost of redemption and the victory that follows. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. The great red dragon in Revelation 12 verse 3, with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns, symbolizes Satan's global influence and opposition to God. The 7 crowns can be interpreted as representing the 7 continents, suggesting Satan's dominion spans the entire earth, uniting nations under his deception. If connected to modern geopolitical themes, the dragon could symbolize a coalition of nations, including Islamic powers, working within Satan's broader agenda in the end times. The imagery warns of a unified, global opposition to God, ultimately defeated by the Messiah's return and the establishment of his eternal kingdom. The child's birth in Revelation 12 symbolizes Jesus, the Messiah, and his mission of salvation. The dragon's attempt to devour the child reflects Satan's efforts to destroy God's plan. Some interpret this as foreshadowing a future alliance, such as a one-world church, where compromised religious systems, potentially including partnerships with Islamic nations, align under Satan's influence to oppose Christ. This points to end times deception and the ultimate triumph of God's kingdom. Revelation 12 verse 4 describes the dragon's tail sweeping a third of the stars from heaven and casting them to earth, followed by the dragon standing ready to devour the child at birth. The dragon, Satan, casts a third of the stars, interpreted as fallen angels, to earth, signifying his rebellion against God and the spiritual forces aligned with him. He stands poised to destroy the child, Jesus, as soon as he is born, symbolizing Satan's continuous attempts to thwart God's redemptive plan. The stars. These likely represent angels who joined Satan in his rebellion, becoming demonic forces that work against God's kingdom, referencing Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15 and Revelation 9 verse 1. The child. The Messiah, Jesus, whose mission is to defeat Satan and redeem humanity. The dragon's threat, Satan's attempts to destroy Jesus at birth, reflected in historical events like Herod's massacre of infants, Matthew 2 verse 16, demonstrate his persistent opposition to God's purposes. This passage highlights the cosmic battle between good and evil, with Satan's defeat ultimately secured through Christ's triumph. The woman gives birth to a male child, symbolizing Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah. He is prophesied to rule all nations with a rod of iron, representing his just and unbreakable authority over the earth. Despite Satan's attempts to destroy him, the child is caught up to God and his throne, signifying Christ's resurrection, ascension, and exaltation to divine sovereignty at the right hand of the Father. This verse emphasizes Jesus' ultimate victory over evil and his role as the rightful ruler of all creation. Revelation 12 verse 6 depicts the woman fleeing into the wilderness, symbolizing God's provision and protection for his people during a time of great persecution. The wilderness represents a place of refuge, prepared by God, where she is sustained for 1,260 days, 3.5 years. This period is often associated with tribulation or trials, highlighting God's faithfulness in preserving his people even amidst intense opposition and spiritual conflict. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. This verse describes a cosmic battle in heaven, where Michael, a leading archangel, and his angelic forces confront the dragon, Satan, and his demonic followers. Michael is often depicted as God's warrior, representing divine justice and protection. This war signifies a pivotal moment in spiritual history, where the forces of good actively resist and overcome evil. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. This verse describes a heavenly war between Michael, the archangel, and his angelic forces against the dragon, Satan, and his demonic followers. The dragon, identified as Satan in verse 9, is the rebellious being who opposes God's rule and leads other fallen angels in defiance of divine authority. Satan's identity. The dragon is Satan, the adversary of God and humanity. He is also called that old serpent, connecting him to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 3. His role as a deceiver and accuser ties to his rebellion against God's order. His followers, the angels fighting with him, are the fallen angels who joined Satan in his rebellion. They became demons, actively working against God's kingdom. Before the fall in Eden passed. Some interpretations suggest this war occurred before Adam and Eve sinned, as part of Satan's rebellion against God. Satan's expulsion from heaven and his appearance in the Garden of Eden as a deceiver align with this timeline. Support: Jesus mentions seeing Satan fall like lightning from heaven, Luke 10 verse 18, implying a past event. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. The dragon and his angels are defeated and lose their standing in heaven. This marks the complete expulsion of Satan and his forces from the heavenly realm. Their failure symbolizes the ultimate power and authority of God over all rebellious forces. Satan's inability to prevail ensures that he can no longer accuse believers before God, a role he is seen playing in Job 1 verses 6 to 12. That old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. This verse identifies the dragon as Satan, the deceiver of humanity, and the one who led the rebellion against God. He is also referred to as that old serpent, connecting him to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, who deceived Eve, Genesis 3. Cast out of heaven, Satan and his fallen angels are now confined to the earth, where they continue their mission of deception and opposition to God's plans. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." Revelation 12 verse 10 declares a heavenly proclamation of victory, announcing the arrival of salvation, God's kingdom, and Christ's authority. The accuser, Satan, who constantly brought charges against believers before God, has been defeated and cast out of heaven. This verse celebrates the triumph of Christ and the assurance of God's justice and power over evil. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he hath but a short time. Verse 11. Believers overcome Satan through three key elements. The blood of the Lamb. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross provides the ultimate victory over sin and death. The word of their testimony. Faithful believers boldly proclaim the truth of Christ, resisting false teachings and pagan influences. Their sacrificial faith. They remain loyal to God, even at the cost of their lives, rejecting practices and traditions that oppose his commandments. In a modern sense, this can include resisting influences such as secularized or pagan-rooted celebrations, Christmas and Easter traditions that mix with non-biblical customs, and worship practices that diverge from God's instructions, such as Sunday worship instead of observing the biblical Sabbath. Overcoming involves upholding God's commandments, rejecting idolatry, and staying faithful to the one true God. Verse 12. Heaven rejoices over Satan's expulsion, but earth is warned of his intensified efforts to deceive. This includes promoting false religions, syncretism, and practices that turn people away from God. Believers are called to resist these deceptions, standing firm in their faith as Satan's time grows short. Victory over Satan is achieved by living in alignment with God's commandments, rejecting false religious practices, and staying steadfast in the truth of Christ's sacrifice and teachings. This spiritual perseverance is vital as the end times bring increased challenges and deception. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. This verse reveals Satan's response after being cast out of heaven. Filled with rage, he focuses his wrath on the woman, who represents God's covenant people. The woman symbolizes either Israel, as the nation through which the Messiah, the man-child, was born. Satan's persecution reflects historical and future attacks on Israel as part of his opposition to God's redemptive plan. The church, representing spiritual Israel, or the collective body of believers who continue to bear witness to Christ's mission. Satan's inability to harm Christ directly after his ascension leads him to target the woman. This persecution reflects Satan's broader mission to oppose God's work on earth by attacking his people through physical persecution. Historical examples include the oppression of Israel, the early church, and modern-day Christian persecution. Spiritual deception, leading believers astray through false teachings, idolatry, and worldly influences. Global tribulation. In end times prophecy, Satan's wrath intensifies, targeting believers and Israel during the tribulation period. This verse emphasizes the ongoing spiritual war between Satan and God's people, showing how Satan's anger at his defeat drives him to increase his attacks on those aligned with God. Despite this, the underlying message of Revelation assures believers of God's ultimate victory and protection for his faithful. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Summary of 14 to 15. God provides protection and sustenance for his people, symbolized by the woman fleeing into the wilderness with the help of eagle-like wings. Despite Satan's relentless attacks, depicted as a flood of destructive efforts, God's intervention ensures the survival and perseverance of his faithful during the trials of the end times. What the flood represents. In Revelation 12 verse 15, the flood symbolizes Satan's attempt to overwhelm and destroy God's people, the woman, using various means. Here are some possible interpretations of what the flood could signify. Overwhelming persecution. Satan may use physical violence, societal oppression, or direct attacks on believers to eradicate their faith or destroy them. Historical examples include the persecution of the early church and the oppression of Israel. Spiritual deception. The flood could symbolize a torrent of lies, false doctrines, and ideologies aimed at leading people away from God. This includes blending pagan practices with worship or creating a one-world religious system opposed to God. Global political or social forces. It might represent the rise of oppressive governments, movements, or systems that actively work against God's people, seeking to subjugate or eliminate them. End-time chaos. A literal or metaphorical representation of catastrophic events, wars, natural disasters, or societal collapse, unleashed to destabilize and destroy the faithful. This phrase, used in Revelation 12 verse 14, is a prophetic way to describe a specific period. Daniel 7 verse 25 and Daniel 12 verse 7. The phrase is used to describe a period during which God's people are oppressed. Revelation 11 verses 2-3 and Revelation 13 verse 5, related periods of 1,260 days or 42 months, both equaling 3.5 years, align with this prophecy. This time represents a limited period during which Satan is allowed to intensify his persecution of God's people. Despite its severity, it is also a reminder that this time is under God's control and will end according to his plan. Flood represents Satan's overwhelming attacks, whether through persecution, deception, or societal forces. Time, times, and half a time, a prophetic period of 3.5 years during which Satan intensifies his efforts, but God provides protection and sustenance for his people. It serves as a symbol of both trial and divine care. Verse 16, "And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth." This verse depicts God's intervention in protecting the woman, representing his faithful people. The earth helped the woman symbolizes a divinely ordained natural or providential event that protects God's people from Satan's overwhelming attack, the flood. This could represent literal events, earthquakes, or natural phenomena, or symbolic ones, God using circumstances to thwart Satan's plans. Swallowed the flood. Similar to how the earth opened to swallow Korah's rebellion, Numbers 16:31-33, this imagery suggests God's power over Satan's destructive forces. It reassures that no matter the intensity of Satan's attacks, God will intervene to ensure the survival of his faithful remnant. Verse 17, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." This verse explains Satan's shift in focus after failing to destroy the woman. Wroth with the woman. Satan, furious at being thwarted, intensifies his hatred and begins targeting her offspring. The remnant of her seed represents the faithful believers who remain steadfast in their commitment to God. They are distinguished by two key characteristics. Keep the commandments of God. This includes obeying God's moral laws and rejecting false practices, such as pagan traditions that have infiltrated worship, Christmas, Easter, and Sunday observance replacing the Sabbath. Scriptures emphasize the importance of obedience to God's laws. "If you love me, keep my commandments." John 14 verse 15. "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." Revelation 22 verse 14. Have the testimony of Jesus Christ. They believe in Yeshua, Jesus, as the Messiah, bear witness to his truth, and resist worldly and pagan influences. This testimony involves living out faith by rejecting idolatry and adhering solely to God's word. Revelation 14:12 here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Believers must remain vigilant in rejecting practices rooted in pagan traditions. Christmas, originally tied to pagan festivals like Saturnalia and rebranded into Christianity, it diverts from biblically mandated holy days. Easter, named after pagan fertility gods, its customs, e.g., eggs and rabbits, contrast with biblical teachings. Sunday worship, instituted by human tradition, it replaced the biblical Sabbath, Saturday. Faithful believers uphold God's appointed times and laws instead. Satan targets those who resist these influences, but their steadfastness ensures God's protection and reward. Until next post, Shalom.